let you in on some Zealand lore. You ready? Do you like Zealand lore? Do you want some Zealand lore? That would be this. This is probably the thing that I am most proud of. I know you guys joke about Zealand go for a run all the time, so I was training for a half marathon. Well, this is a New York City Marathon finisher's medal. I am not a particularly gifted long distance runner. I never was. I hate running, actually, but I always had this kind of illusion in my mind. It turned out not to be an illusion, I guess. But this thought in my mind that, you know what, some point in my life, I'm going to run a marathon. That just sounds so unreachable. It sounds so impossible that that would be one of my life's great achievements, right? And I had that opportunity presented to me last year. I had a friend say, well, we've got this one extra spot left with kind of who we're running the marathon with. I went, you know what? Screw it. I'm going to go for it. And then I trained for like 7 months, and then I ran the marathon, and I was like crawling over the bridges. I got double leg cramps, like full leg cramps, both calves, both hamstrings. You know, I was eating mustard, drinking Pedialyte, and absolutely gutted it out to finish the marathon somewhere near my goal time. But honestly, the time almost doesn't even matter. Right? Finish the marathon in time to get a finisher's medal of the damn marathon, and that is what mattered. That's what mattered to me. One of my greatest achievements ever. And it is absolutely nothing, right, compared to what this guy did. Well, hold on. Let me see if I can find a good picture of him. Just this guy right here. That guy's name's Russ Cook. He goes by Hardest Geezer on Twitter and on Instagram. And right when he was about right here on the border of South Africa to Namibia, I saw him. He popped up on my Twitter, and he was posting videos every day going, all right, just stomping ones and two, lads. And so he had these funny quips and sayings, and he kept starting it with, day 41 of running the entire length of Africa. And I'm like, sure, buddy. They're like, you kind of believe it, but you're like, this is going to be one hell of a journey, right? This is going to be an incredibly long journey. And I went along for the ride. I followed him on Twitter. I watched, he would post these videos while he was running, and I would watch them. I would keep up to date with what was going on with him, and I mean this seriously. This might be the most impressive thing I've ever seen. And I'm chronically on the internet, right? But I'm warning you, this may actually inspire you to do something. Because I'm going to be, what is crazy is this feels like a lifetime ago for me, right? But one of the main reasons I was able to do this was I was following Russ Cook on this run of Africa, right? Which started before my training for this New York Marathon, which I finished in November. Okay? Russ started running this like a month before I started training for the marathon, and I was borrowing Russ's phrases. I'm like, I just got to go out and stomp today, right? Just got to go out eating up the tarmac. It inspired me because he did this. He became the first human being that anybody seems to know of that's run all the way from the southern point, like the most southern point of Africa, to the most northern point of Africa. Now, there's a part of this. There's a couple of things around this that really annoyed me, and we are going to get to that. But the main, most important thing, and I want to get distracted by that stuff, is how unbelievably insane this actually is. All right, because I just told you about how hard it was for me to run one marathon with 7 months of training, right? And I wasn't starting from a point of being in terrible shape. I will not pretend to be the most in shape person, right? But I was not somebody that was like grossly overweight, or like I at one point in my life a pretty decent athlete. I played like 5 sports in high school, right? I play rec sports with other like adults in New York. I play like rec league soccer and stuff, and so I was at least at a passable starting point. I'm not a good long distance runner, so it did take a lot of work and a lot of perseverance and whatever to to finally get to that point to run one marathon. This guy ran over 382 marathons in 351 days. 382 over. Every news site, because of course every news site started to cover this once they realized he was going to finish on the final day, had a different number: 386 marathons, 390 marathons. If you're ever at a point where they can't even figure out how many marathons exactly you ran, that's important. And if you have a pessimistic mindset and you're saying, well, how can they prove this? There's an app called Strava that really tracks you like on your running. It's what I used for my marathon training, actually. If you want to follow me on Strava, then you just have to find me. So good luck. I'm not posting a link to my freaking running app, but then you can track. Like he showed his whole route and him running it, right? So it was like verifiable that he ran the entire thing. But think about what this means for a second. Namibia is a desert, right? Obviously, it's got nothing on the Sahara Desert, which he also ran through. This is not a road. Right? He just picked a route that was known that he could get through the Sahara Desert. He had to run at night to avoid the heat in the sandstorms, right? In here, we're talking about some of the craziest jungle. We're talking about running through the DR Congo, where he actually got kidnapped and held hostage by dudes with machetes, and they had to bribe them to release him. He got robbed in Angola because he was, of course, basically live tweeting his location. A bunch of people stole his passports and stuff. While he was over here, I believe in Nigeria, he actually had to go into the doctor's office, and he was peeing blood. He had to go in and get a scan to make sure that his back wasn't falling apart, then just take a bunch of pain meds and keep running. He had to start a petition online to get a visa to run through Algeria. This is patently insane what this guy did. And the amount of training that you can do for this is only so much, because I would say from the border of Namibia to the finish line was all done right here. And that, to me, is what makes this it's the most impressive thing I've ever seen. The more you think about it, the more impressive it gets. Every single day, this guy got up and ran more than a marathon, with the finish line so far in the distance that you can't even sniff it, right? I mean, literally so far in the distance, you'd have to run across Europe like north to south like 4 or 5 times just to be able to get there, right? Like, that is amazing. People have no idea how big Africa is until you go to this website called The True Size Of. Let me show you. Because what The True Size Of shows you, right, is the distortion of something called the Mercator projection on the world map. This is India. This is China. This is the United States. Right, running from Nigeria to Western Sahara, which obviously he didn't do. He got here and then kind of cut in. That is like running from Texas, Dallas, to running to like around the West Coast and then up to Idaho. And the U.S. is huge, right? This is China. That's India. Like Africa being on the equator distorts it on the Mercator projection so that it looks smaller. Africa is massive. And if you're wondering why that's the case, the Mercator projection basically, like, it's the least distorted at the equator, and then it just adds more distortion as you incrementally get away from the equator. That's how it works. It's because you taking a globe. Like, if you ever took a round thing and tried to push it onto a flat surface, it's gonna rip somewhere. That's because it has to it has to distort in order to fit onto the flat surface. This is so not relevant to anything we're talking about. The point is, Africa's massive. It's way bigger than you even thought it was. It is always nice for me to even receive a reminder of when you're looking at Nigeria to Mauritania, you're not thinking it's that far. But if I'm talking about running from Dallas, Texas to Portland, Oregon, like along the border, it is running that far. I mean, it is insane. This guy ran across the United States like 4 times over, right? Like, it is unbelievable. And I think the part of the reason that it's so unbelievable to me is I personally am a big believer that you can accomplish anything you want to. I think the biggest I don't mean to turn into like Tony Robbins here, right? But I think the biggest limitation a lot of people put on themselves is the limitation they're putting on themselves, right? Is people assuming like, oh, I could never play professional soccer. I could never play in the NBA, right? I could never do this. I could never do that. I think that if, we had that Cristiano Ronaldo, Tom Brady mindset, right? Where you spent every waking second doing plyometrics and cryogenic therapy and 10 hours of practice every day and drinking kale shakes and like every single thing. If you did that for your life, I'm of the belief, right, that I don't want to do that, and I probably don't have the mental fortitude to do that if we're being entirely honest, but if I did do that, I think I could have achieved, any of those things. I feel like I think I could have done it. I think I could have been a professional soccer player at a pretty high level. I think I could, like, if I really, really, really dedicated my life to it, right? And even an Ironman, something where you like swim really far, bike really far, run really far. I think if I dedicated my life to training to do that, that I could do it. And because I am of that belief, rightly or wrongly, right? Just this flagrant overconfidence that I have, right? We had a very interesting conversation about this sort of thing on stream, actually. But that if you dedicate, whether it be years of your life or whatever, to being able to accomplish something, that you can actually accomplish it. I don't think I could do this. I do not think if I dedicated my entire life to running the length of Africa in a year, that I could do this. And that is what makes it so amazing to me. That's what leaves me completely in awe of this man that has done something that in recorded human history has just never been done before. And the reason it's never been done before is because it is so impossible, right? But before you even factor in the geopolitical and cultural challenges that this guy faced in order to just be able to get through 16 different countries, some of which are fairly conflict-ridden. I mean, he picked a route that would allow him to avoid maybe the worst of the worst and maybe avoid certain countries, but still very, very difficult. Still borderline impossible. I would have told you that it was impossible unless this guy did it. And I believe wholeheartedly, despite my rampant optimism, that if I trained my whole life, I would not be able to do this. I don't think I have so much confidence in my ability to force myself to do stuff. This being a big part of it. I'd never run more than a 5K before I did this. I couldn't be more proud of this. I don't think I could do this. I think that this takes a special kind of person, a perseverance that I can only sit back, make a YouTube video about, and kind of admire. And this is a great example of kind of what he faced. Okay, so Ali Law is somebody that was a part of his team. So he didn't have a ton of money at the start of it. Obviously, the attention on him grew. People like me just kind of watching his journey. So he had this team kind of in a van. You can see the van in the back of this picture here. And there's like beds in the van, and they would have food, and they were recording what was happening. I think they made they're making a documentary out of it, but they were also recording kind of YouTube videos, taking pictures, documenting this incredible journey. And this guy said, a few months ago, I flew out to Africa to meet Hardest Geezer. He was so ill, literally on death's door, he could barely speak when I arrived. The next morning, we got to the starting line, and he threw up 3 times. The most sick I've ever seen come out of a person's mouth, and then he just wiped the sick out of his ginger beard with a baby wipe and got on the road to smash the day's marathon. No bitching or complaining. This man is a different breed. There's very few people like Russ in the world. He's on day 158 now, and if you don't already follow him, go show the man some support. After this point, he ran for nearly 200 more days. I hate throwing up. I'm going to be honest. If I throw up 3 times, I'm not running a marathon that day. You can catch me in bed in the van. Right. But when people look at achievements like this, they always think about how great that is, but they don't think about what it takes to get that greatness. That's what it takes to get this greatness. Right. Throwing up 3 times and then running 70 kilometers. Right. Like while you're so sick that somebody says you are on death's door when they meet you, that you can barely talk to them. That's a kind of inner strength that despite my confidence, like I was saying, I just don't think that I could achieve. It is actually unbelievable. And even on the final day, right, because he always invited people to run with him. Every time he was running through a city, he would have the run club from that city kind of running with him, and it was awesome, and they were all having a good time. Well, of course, on the final day, a ton of people flew out to run with him, which is awesome. I wish I could have been one of those people at least to kind of watch him finish this run, because it's just so cool. It's just such a cool thing. I like watching people do cool stuff. I like supporting people that accomplish amazing things. That seems amazing. But then this guy, who's like an actual runner, said, in response to somebody like, "Are you running the whole distance?" This is the final day. After Russ Cook's just run across the entire Sahara Desert and everything else, he said, tried it, but he's a beast. Made it halfway and hitched a lift to the end. Hopefully there before Russ, but he's moving at a click. The man's a machine. That's an incredible thing to say about a dude who's made it all the way. He's not limping across the finish line here, right? He has battled this out, and he is still just cooking. he is just cooking and cooking and cooking. I mean, not to make a pun out of his last name, but he was absolutely barbecuing. And then, of course, he gets to the finish line. And this is the moment that he actually finishes his journey to the northernmost point in Africa, which has this like kind of statue that says, "Welcome to the northernmost point of Africa," you know. And that is just, it's an amazing moment. And obviously there's a large crowd there to kind of welcome him. And he'd always, and everyone, a lot of his videos, he'd be like, "Oh, we're going to have a strawberry daiquiri on the beach in Tunisia. And that's what I'm looking forward to." And he got to have that strawberry daiquiri. I did say there were a couple of things that annoyed me. You can probably figure out what it is after having watched that video. The first one is, this is not the only person either. This whole final day, people were just trying to Salt Bae a little bit of fame off of Hardest Geezer. There is an epidemic, and I'm just going to talk about it in society, basically, right? That is perfectly embodied by this dude in the yellow here. Now, he could be a great guy, right? He could be a great father, great friend, great brother, whatever, right? But there is this effect that attention has on people, right? Because of the kind of dopamine hit that you get from it. It's a very dangerous effect. It kind of turns, you know, when you have like a new puppy or maybe like a new kitten or whatever, and then you have a bunch of you have a bunch of people over for the first time, right? You have your first house party since you got them, and they get so excited they don't know what to do with themselves. They're just like, right? That's how people get in this situation, right? There's thousands of people lining the road, screaming, cameras everywhere. BBC is literally running on the other side of him, interviewing him as he's kind of coming down. Very, very cool shot that they got, by the way. Here he is, like turning to run kind of onto this rocky beach. This is the reporter, and then he starts running with him. That's just objectively an absolutely sick shot, right? But this, you know, but as great as this person might be in this moment, he's turned into the puppy dog. Right. And we've got to improve our awareness as a society of when the moment is meant for you and when it's not. Right. Because right now, as great as he could be in other aspects of his life. Right. Because this guy's been slated a lot, and I don't want to add to it. I don't want to make it feel like he's like a bad person or anything. But he's overwhelmed by the excitement of the moment. And he like literally just, you know, you got to let Russ go ahead here. You just you have to let Russ go ahead. And the epidemic in society is people becoming so excited by all of this energy and their moment of fame and being this and that. And then in Salt Bae, I think, was a bit more malicious in it than this guy is, right? I think Salt Bae was legitimately just annoying people that had pulled off the greatest accomplishment in their lives, right? And I don't think Hardest Geezer was particularly annoyed by this. He was probably too tired to be annoyed. But if you ever end up in a situation where you are interacting with somebody that is accomplishing something, where you're interacting maybe with an athlete or with whatever, just act normal. Act like a normal human being. Try and take a deep breath. Think like a normal human being. Have understanding. Have compassion. Be like, this is his moment. This is his moment. It's not your moment. Right? Let everybody that is here because one man has done something that I have just gone to great lengths to explain how unbelievable that one thing is. Let him have it. Right? Because it is very, very, very nice to be able to celebrate that sort of thing. I felt great all day. Right? Like the effect that this guy has on other people's lives. Right? And hopefully the Zealandism channel has on, or whatever, has on other people's lives too. But I felt great all day because I knew he was finishing his run that day, and watching all this stuff made me feel so happy. But just try, if you ever end up in those types of moments, to take a deep breath and look at the bigger picture and be like, actually, you know, it's his moment. This is not, you know, not like if you want all of the cameras and all the people cheering, dude, with the Tunisian flag, run the length of Africa. It's not that hard, clearly, and then you know you'll be able to get all of the adulation that your heart desires. You know, he also like tries to hug him afterwards, and I'm like, this dude is clearly all hopped up on Mountain Dew. Where Hardest Geezer, you know, has all indication has no idea who this guy is. So that's just a giant ball of awkward. And then, you know, it was picked up by everybody on the final day. That made me so happy. And how hardcore is this, by the way? Wait, I'm going to save this for the end because there's one other thing that was annoying me. And that was one of the running magazines said that 12 years ago, they officially contested that Russ Cook was the first person to run the length of Africa. And of course, Twitter being Twitter in particular, they kind of picked that up and they were like, this guy's a fraud. But then when you look at the actual route, so apparently it was very impressive, right? This dude basically ran around the world. He ran from like the northern point of Finland and Norway and kind of Sweden, like up there, and then ran down all the way down through Egypt and down to South Africa. But if you know anything about Africa, right, if we're looking at the true size of, Egypt's here and Tunisia's up here. So the northernmost point is not here, right? And so should it matter? Probably not, right? Because then that dude got on a boat, came down here, and then ran up from South America, like all the way up to somewhere in northern Canada. Like, it was really impressive. He did it 12 years ago. Clearly, it didn't get a lot of media hype, or the guy, which I don't know why he was doing it, but he did it. And this running magazine decided to contest it and kicked off this whole controversy about whether Russ Cook's claim to be the first person to run the entire length of Africa was false, which is clearly just so petty. Like, can we just not for 5 seconds? Can we just not? Right? Because there's a difference, right? I mean, there is clearly a difference. And are we really going to look somebody in the eyes who just ran over 382 marathons and be like, well, actually, like some dude just working a Twitter account, right, is going to be the person that's going to try and sass this guy that's been like feet to tarmac for a year to accomplish something that no other human being's ever done. I mean, no other human being is able to verify that they have run from the southernmost point to the northernmost point. But so I just wanted to clarify that for anybody that happened to engage with any of that nonsense, because that was actually getting me mad. I'm like, why can't we just celebrate a good thing? But I'll leave you with this, just a hardcore way to kind of finish it, because he's on Good Morning Britain the next day. Here's Russ Cook post Strawberry Daiquiri.
Was there ever a moment where you thought, I can't carry on?
Nah, I always knew, it was inevitable. Just needed to keep plugging away one step at a time, and eventually it'd get done.
Hell yeah, brother. Hell yeah.